voice of Alice. Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland is one of the greatest achievements in children's literature, and so it's no mystery why Walt Disney was so keen on making a movie based on the book. It wasn't easy. It took Walt 13 years, 5 attempts, before he finally got Alice on the screen. But I think it was worth it. The presentation of Alice in Wonderland that you are about to see is accompanied by interviews with Lewis Carroll experts and Disney historians who weave together the story of Lewis Carroll himself and Walt Disney's passion for making a movie based on Carroll's masterpiece. It's about two brilliant men who lived almost a century apart, but who collaborated across time to create one of the most popular films in the Disney canon. Enjoy.
I'm Brian Sibley, and I've written about Walt Disney, and I've also written about Lewis Carroll, and for some while was secretary of the Lewis Carroll Society. So I have an interesting position of being able to observe both the dream child of Lewis Carroll and the dream child as realized by Walt Disney. Oh, but before I forget, you know the title card, which has Lewis Carroll's name spelled wrong. It would be great if somebody could put that right.
I'm animation critic and historian Charles Solomon, and I'm happy to be a part of this presentation of Walt Disney's Alice in Wonderland and how he adapted the novel of the genius Lewis Carroll to the medium of animation.
I think it's interesting that Walt Disney himself wanted very much to stick closely to Lewis Carroll's book.
Stories that were the basis of many of the classic Disney films like Snow White, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty are fairy tales that exist in multiple versions. And as long as, say, Cinderella tries on the glass slipper and has to work for her mean stepmother, people will accept that as Cinderella, and you can embroider, you can add the side characters and add actions.
With Alice in Wonderland, you have a completely different case. You have a story that was already absolutely well known and absolutely rooted in relationship to the author who wrote it, Lewis Carroll. And I think to understand the film and to understand the story it's based on, you have to also understand the man who wrote it.
I'm Morton Cohen, and I have specialized in teaching and writing about Victorian literature. Lewis Carroll is one of the authors I spent a lot of time with. His real name was Charles Lutwidge Dodson.
Charles Lutwidge Dodson was the tutor of mathematics at Christ Church, Oxford, the oldest and most illustrious of the Oxford colleges. But he had another side to his life, a side that was full of creativity and wit and amusement. And that was the world embodied by this non-existent character, Lewis Carroll. How do we marry up this establishment figure of this clergyman who teaches mathematics and the person who writes one of the world's most famous fantasy stories? How can these two possibly coexist in the same person? To understand that, you have to go back to his childhood.
But how can one possibly pay attention to a book with no pictures in it?
He was born in January 1832. He was the son of a clergyman.
His father was an archdeacon in the Church of England. He was the third child of a family of 11 children.
He loved his siblings, and because it was such a large family, he became really an instructor, a protector, a defender, and an entertainer.
Lewis Carroll was a child with a ceaselessly inquiring and imaginative mind, and he used that in entertaining his brothers and sisters.
He loved to play with them and to create jokes and riddles and games. He put on a brown wig and a white sheet and performed as a magician with all sorts of tricks.
He created and built his own puppet theatre, wrote his own puppet plays. He drew very witty little cartoons, as they might have been thought of at the time. He was quite a good comic artist. He created magazines for the family, sort of homemade magazines. They were called Useful and Instructive Poetry, the Rectory Umbrella, Mishmash. The family all contributed, but by far and away the best bits were always published by Charles, and these little magazines became, in some cases, the origin of some of the ideas that later found their way into the Alice books and his other writings.
Charles Dodson actually had a pleasant childhood, but it wasn't without struggle.
He had two impediments: a deaf right ear that occurred after he had a bout of mumps in school. The other impediment was a stammer.
He later shared stories of being picked on at boarding school when he was away from his beloved family.
He himself got very good education, went to Richmond School first, and then to rugby, and then ultimately to Christ Church's Fathers College at Oxford.
Hi, I'm Daniel Singer. I'm a former Disney Imagineer and a great lover of Alice in Wonderland. Charles Dodgson, when he graduated, he was immediately offered the position of mathematical lecturer and room and board for the rest of his life. So he became just sort of part of Christ Church.
When he went to Oxford, it was only natural that he would become acquainted with the children of his associates there, and he would behave to them in the same way as he behaved to his own siblings.
In his late 20s, he met the children of the dean of the college.
Wait! No, I'm overdue. I'm nearly in a stew. No time to say goodbye. Hello, I'm late.
They're all living in very close proximity to one another. Lewis Carroll has rooms in Tom Quad, the central quadrangle at Christchurch. And just a little way away, there's the little family living in the deanery. He got on very well with the whole family. Dean Little and his wife and their 4 children. Harry, Lorena, Edith and Alice. The Alice Little who would inspire the great British classic, Alice in Wonderland.
The Victorian era was an exciting